Good, here. Oh, well, I've got a little time, so, how about we look at some Raiders gear?
Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
We lost him.
Someone came to the
It belongs in a museum. You had to look, didn't you?
I understand its power.
I wanted the hat to be true.
Illumination. Fortune and glory.
Hello! Today, we are going to be doing a tour through gear. Now, I plan on making this a series, so make sure to come back if you want other things. Temple of Doom is definitely going to happen. Crusade, because there's some overlap from Temple of Doom, I might scrounge something together, but I also might wait. Enough about the other films. Let's start with the original, the coup de grace, Raiders. Now, Raiders of the Lost Ark, the reason why people like the outfit specifically is, number one, it's iconic. It kind of set the standard for adventure movies. In its own right, is a very practical thing. In terms of what he actually wears, it's a big, heavy leather jacket, something that even Harrison Ford wondered about when he was walking through the jungles of Hawaii. But he also wears a safari-type shirt with pleats that run down either side through the pockets. Next, he wears some officer-type pink trousers. He also wears some heavy leather boots that were specifically recommended by Ford. He actually asked that they change them from the original model they were going to use. Everything else is kind of out of the standard of what you'd expect for archaeology. He uses a bag to store anything you might need for the moment. He also has a gun belt in case things go awry, and also his iconic bullwhip. And of course, we can't forget the iconic Indiana Jones fedora. Now, I have a few props, we'll get into that later, but for now, let's start out with the gear. Now, in Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones's fedora has a tight pinch, something we wouldn't see for any of the other films. We get a little close to it with things like Dial of Destiny and Last Crusade. Now, also, something unique to Raiders is that the hat has a purposeful swoop, but specifically, this is known as the Raiders turn. Now, the way this works is that the hat is offset by about an inch or so, which causes the brim to warp, and then the hat is shaped after that's already been done. Now, specifically for this hat, I got this from Ad Vintage Hats over in Germany. It was made by Tomas, one of, if not my favorite hat makers. This hat is such just an amazing thing to wear. It's extremely comfortable, and it just looks beautiful. Now, of course, I've done a little weathering on it myself, but only because the original weathering that came with it had worn off. It's not really a hard thing to do. All you need is a little bit of Fuller's Earth, which is kind of like a dusty pigment powder, and you just put it on exactly how you want it to. If you want a lot of weathering, if you want a little. Usually when I do my Raiders outfit, I like to go for a pretty standard Cairo. This, to me, sort of just means it's a little dusty, it's a little dirty. Now, the Raiders hat also, it's a little funky. It's got this kind of mushrooming you'll see here. Kind of puffs out a bit. Now, that's why I love Tomas, because not only does he get the details right, and he measures it out, and he sizes it to you specifically so that it'll look right proportional to you, but he's just able to get that nice Raiders look. Now, moving down a little bit, we have Indiana Jones's jacket. I love this jacket, I've put a lot of work into it, and I've had a few accidents with this thing, but if you ask any Indy cosplayer, that's pretty much a standard. Now, this is my Bill Kelso Raiders jacket. This is his standard hero model. The only differences between this and his other ones, slightly different pocket flaps and a slightly different color. Now, the back, mine is pretty wrinkled. In the movie, only certain parts of it are really kind of crunched up and crinkled. This side panel has some striation lines on it. Mine didn't have that. I could probably send it out to someone to get that if I really wanted to. I've already had enough things happen to this that I just don't want to take the chance. I had a couple tears in it. You probably didn't even notice it till I pointed it out. Now, after I got this jacket, I did do a few things. Number one, I soaked it completely. I wore it to work in the rain, got all those nice creases in, and then I left it out to dry. It looked completely different than how I first got it. Now, the other important thing I did is I did get the sleeves tailored. They were about 1.5 inches too long, and that's not really a hard fix. I was just happy to find a tailor that was really, really good at doing leather. Now, in Raiders and Temple of Doom, the straps on the back have kind of this two-prong box that sticks through the leather and holds it. The other thing is the size of the pockets. Now, every jacket has specifics that are a little different from the other ones, but what people like about the Raiders jackets is these big, bulky pockets. They're these nice rounded flaps. Now, the zipper on mine is silver. Some people like to get it brass because in the film they painted brass over a silver zipper. And the thing is, you could go with either silver or brass for your Raiders jacket. I went with silver because there's a lot of times where it is just silver because a lot of that brass paint was just wearing off. Now, underneath my jacket here, I've got a wonderful shirt from Corellian Dry Goods. He's an excellent maker. He's especially great if you're starting out on your indie cosplay, because he's super affordable, super comfortable, and he offers a pretty decent range of shirts. It's not just one style. This specifically is his Cairo model. Some people like to go with just his basic adventure shirt model for Raiders. I really wanted the Cairo. Like I said earlier, I am doing Cairo. The shirt is great. It's a super comfortable material. And something Adam does is he likes to make all of his supplies extra long so that you can tailor it to your body. I just think it's a really cool thing, and I'm glad he does that because I'm not Harrison Ford and you likely aren't either. So you want it to look good on your body. You don't want it to look good on Harrison Ford's body. Now, for the pants, also from Adam, his wool blend trousers. These things are amazing. I honestly think they're the best indie pants on the market. They've got a nice bit of stretch to them. They're such a great color. All I had to do was get a hem. For mine, I just did a 1-inch hem. There's a few shots in Raiders, I think, where you can see a 1-inch hem. I'm just not a guy who cares that much about the stitching details. Now, the only thing about indie pants specifically is that they kind of have a low hang on them, which means that they're not very good for running. A lot of people I've heard, their indie pants, they hang low when they try to do a stunt with them, and they end up tearing a hole in the bottom. But it's just a reminder that Indiana Jones, while his outfit may look practical, it's not really as practical as it looks. The bag itself is an original World War II gas mask bag, which is what they used for the films. Mine has a little bit of tearing on this. I'm hoping to get a new one soon. Now, inside, I usually don't keep anything inside my bag unless I have some props with me. I do, but it usually looks nicer without the stuff in it, and I also don't want to forget anything in there. The strap is from Franklin Pratt leather. I might get a new one eventually, but this one works just fine for me, and I haven't really had a reason to get a new one. I've actually modified this one just a little bit. All I really did was darken it a bit, crease it up to get some nice texture in it. I've got a web belt. Now, most of the ones you might find are going to be tan. In Raiders of the Lost Ark and Temple of Doom, he wears a brown web belt. A lot of people have trouble finding a brown web belt. Go to Amazon, put brown in your search bar, and you'll find plenty. Now, for the buckle specifically, I think it's always nice to have something a little more real, something a little more historical. And the good thing is you can find a lot of historical used brass web belts, fully brass. Now, they come in all sorts of eras. I think mine was around the Korean War, so 50s, 60s. They look great. They aren't kind of that flat, shiny chrome as if they had this kind of fake look to them, but they have, some of them are scratched, some of them have a lot more grime on them. I got 4 for $14, and that was with shipping. Probably the best place to look is Mercari, eBay, any kind of secondhand sellers app. You never know what you're going to find. Most of the time, though, they're going to be pretty cheap. Indy also wears a gun belt. Now, the gun belt is usually what he carries his holster and his whip on. In Raiders of the Lost Ark, the whip holder is attached directly to the belt. Now, mine specifically is from Make It Jones. He's a great maker. This is the first thing I've gotten from him. The only difference between this and his other cut is that the other one is slightly longer. That's only for the idle grab. See, I love this whip holder. It's got a security stud, which just means it's a little harder to open and close. I love how sturdy it is. It's nice not having to worry about your whip holder sliding around. And then over here, we have the holster. This is also a Franklin Pratt holster, but it's pretty different than what you'd see on his website. That's because I've put this through a ton of work, ton of weathering, and I've personalized it. That's something I think a lot of people need to do more with their indie gear. There's always something you might see about a piece of gear and think, I want to change that. I think I could make that look a little bit better. All I needed to do was do a wet mold, and I also slathered this thing with coconut oil, which darkened it, but there's better ways to do it if you want those specific looks. Indy wears Alden 405s. A few people like to use Alden 403s because they're a little darker and look a little closer to the film. Thankfully, the ones I got were already pretty beat up, so I didn't have to do that much work to make them look like they do in the film. Now, the other thing about Aldens is they are probably the most expensive item you're gonna have on your list for Indy gear. Brand new Aldens can be upwards of $600 to $700. Thankfully, people sell Aldens all the time on the secondary market. I got mine for around $400. I like to have my boots be rough and dirty because that's what Indy would have worn. Some people like to have brand new boots, and some people like to have their boots falling apart. Now, inside my holster, we've got this pistol right here. This is modeled after his Cairo Smith & Wesson. This doesn't function at all. It actually broke just before I was setting up filming. Neither the hammer nor the trigger move on this, which is perfectly fine. Now, the other firearm that Indy carries in Raiders is the Browning High Power. Now, this is something that fans were pretty confused about for a long time, and it wasn't until Lucasfilm made the Timeless Heroes documentary that we had this question answered of where did Indy keep this? There's a few seconds of behind the scenes footage of Harrison Ford twisting his body around, and we can see that he actually wears a shoulder holster to carry his Browning. Now, in terms of this prop itself, I made this recently. I'm very happy with it. The trigger can move, it can cock back, it can hold the slide back. It's got just a little bullet in there, but overall, this is such a cool thing to have. Since I don't have a holster for this, I'm gonna go set it back. Now, of course, the third thing Indy carries in his arsenal is the bullwhip. This whip specifically is about 8.5 feet. It's from Trinity Whips. It was originally a 9-foot Raiders that my friend got, and he gifted it to me, which I'm very thankful for. Now, the Raiders whip is a very, very light tan. Over the few years of use in this whip, it's gotten pretty dark, almost to a Temple of Doom color. I'd like to say I can perform pretty well with this. I've spent the past few years learning. Thankfully, I've got some great friends that I've spent plenty of time learning how to use a whip. I can only do a few things with it, but it's enough for me. One of the first props I've got here is a pretty simple one, just a paper prop of Indy's Pan Am plane ticket. This is for the big flying boat that he uses to fly from San Francisco to Nepal. It's a pretty cool thing to have. It's something I keep up on my little stand of Indy props. Now, one of the most famous props in the entire series is the Chachapoyan idol. This is a gift from one of my friends. Now, in the movie, the idol does have realistic eyes. There's also a stunt idol that has completely golden eyes, has a little bit of heft to it, a little bit of weight. Then again, you don't want one that's too heavy. The one in the temple wasn't. Here I've got my headpiece of the Staff of Ra. I made this a while ago. How I made it, it's just a simple 3D print. I gold leafed it, but as you can see, it's wearing away. It doesn't really catch its shine as much as it used to. Next up, we have the Abner Diary. I don't have anything in this. It's just a bunch of blank pages. I got this with a little archaeology brush. These both came from Magnolia. I was lucky enough to get these both on a sale, so I basically got this little brush for free. Last thing I have with me here are these glasses. I actually found these spur of the moment in a Kohl's. They're just close enough, so they're not any kind of official glasses. If you want some perfect replicas, I'd recommend Magnolia. They do a great pair of Indy glasses. I think every Indy cosplayer should have a good pair of Indy glasses. Well, thanks again everybody for watching. If you like this video, you might want to check out that one where I go through every single possible look I can in the Indiana Jones outfit. I've upgraded quite a few things since then, but if you want to see more than Raiders, that's a great video to watch. And better head out before that boulder comes back.